This video will go over basics in the IDEA software package. First, you want to go ahead and open up IDEA. If you cannot find it on your desktop, you want to go to your Start menu. I've recently used it, so you'll see it here as an option. And it looks like this. If you're unable to find it in your recent programs, you can go to All Programs, and it should be in alphabetical order. You'll see IDEA, and you want to go ahead and select the icon that has the primary colors. So if you go ahead and do that, what you'll see is that IDEA will open, and included in your screen will be the sample project. So this IDEA software has some overlap similarities between both Access and Excel. So it has sort of functionality of both. It's similar to Access in that you are pulling in data files and they are in a database format. Once you pull in your database files, you can add on to the files. However, you cannot edit the original data that was imported into IDEA. So what we're going to do is to practice is we're going to actually go ahead and we're going to generate or create our own project and pull in a data set. And I'm pulling in the data set associated with one of your quizzes, which is inventory data related to, let me take a look really quickly. I believe it's Quiz 2. So Quiz 2 data. So what you want to do as you're going along is you want to go to UB Learns, you want to pull down the data set that's in the solution to Quiz 2. So Quiz 2, and I'm using version 1 if you want to follow along exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new project, and what ends up happening is what you want to do is go to the home ribbon, and you'll notice it gives you the option if you hover over to go ahead and to create. So that allows us to go ahead and to start a new project. For our purposes, we're going to use and we're going to create what we call a managed project for this particular example. And what that means for a managed project, it means you are saving the project to your C drive. If I wanted to, I could go ahead and I could use or save this project as an external project. An external project would require me to save it somewhere else other than my C drive, such as a flash drive. So if you're working on these projects in a computer lab, you're going to want to make sure that you save to an external project, and then you use this little dot 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 button to go ahead and to search for wherever your flash drive is. So here you would go to computer, my flash drive is drive G, and I would go ahead and I would select that as an option. I'm going to go back up to manage project because I'm just going to go ahead and save it on the C drive for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this inventory 311 introduction. So now what we're going to do is you'll notice that we have a new project open up, and all of the data files that were originally in the samples database are now gone. So now we need to go ahead and import in the data files that we would like to use for our analysis. So if you hover over this little desktop icon, you'll see that it says convert data from a variety of file formats and import it into the desktop project. So we're going to go ahead and press on that. And now what it does is the import assistant gives you options. You can import data files in the following file formats. It defaults to text, however, we can go ahead and change it to Excel. If you had an Access database file, if you had a printed report. So there's lots of other options in terms of how your data is retrieved into IDEA. So now that we've selected Excel, you want to go down to your file name, and this is where you want to go ahead and click on the little dot 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 button, which in essence is your File Explorer. It'll open up your File Explorer, and this is where we would go ahead and select a data file that we are going to go ahead and retrieve. So if you went ahead and saved down the data associated with Quiz 2 version 1, hopefully you saved it somewhere on your desktop or somewhere on your flash drive. You're going to go ahead and find where you saved it, and you're going to use that to go ahead and to pull into IDEA. So once you have located the data file, you're going to go ahead and click Next. Now what you'll notice is that IDEA has recognized that our Excel file has 3 different worksheets. We have an inventory price and cost worksheet, we have beginning inventory quantity, we also have inventory sales quantity. So because of the fact that we have our 3 different data files, what it'll do is it's giving us the option of being able to go ahead and to pull all of those data files in at one particular point in time. However, you only want to do that if there is some similarities between your data files, such that, like, I have an option here to make sure that I select my first row is field name. So if I go ahead and I select that, what it does, and if I deselect it, you'll see what it was before. Right now it's saying column 1, and it's going ahead and taking what is my field name, it's putting it into cell, really the first row or the first record. And I don't want my field names to show up as an actual transaction or as an actual line item in my database. So I want to make sure that I go ahead and I select my first row is field names. So that would have to be standard with all of your data files in order for you to go ahead and to select those worksheets to import at the exact same time. So standardization in that we have field names in the first row of the data file we're trying to import. Notice that there's also some blank spaces in these data files. So if I go ahead and I select beginning inventory quantity, so by selecting it, it's highlighted in blue, you'll notice that I have product number, beginning inventory, and then there's a blank column. So there must have been some data in that column at one particular point in time. Same thing for my inventory sales quantity file. There's product number, sales quantity in column 3 and column 4. Now keep in mind that once I go ahead and I import this data into IDEA, I cannot edit it. So we would have to, most likely we would stop, and I'm not going to stop right now, but you most likely would stop and go back and delete those columns in your data file and then try to go ahead and re-import the data into IDEA just so that we didn't have empty columns. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to select all three, make sure that we have selected first row is field names, and now we can go ahead and click OK. Now what you'll notice is that you should have had, and I'm going to go ahead and expand this so we can see the titles. It says inventory data V1, which was the actual name of our data file, and then it says the name of the worksheet, beginning inventory quantity, inventory price and cost, inventory sales quantity. Also by default, it opened up the second data file, and it'll open up one of, if you import multiple worksheets at one time, it'll open up one related to the import. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, I'm going to close it. By closing it, I just simply go ahead and click on the little box, so I can barely go ahead and open things. I can close them quickly. I can open, if I open stuff, I can also right click and I can do close. So that would, if I selected close, it would just close one database. If I had more than one open, and I could have all three open if I want, I can go ahead and I could right click and do close all. So I have options in terms of how I open and close those data files. Now, maybe as we're looking at the titles of these, we want to go ahead and edit them. So once you import them, I cannot change the actual data records themselves. However, I can go ahead and edit the names associated with the data records or databases. So if I go ahead and I right click on the actual name, we have the option to go ahead and you can open it that way, you can delete it, you can rename it, and then there's some other functions that we'll talk about as we move on. So this is just simply a rename. So let's say you want to go in there, we're going to take off inventory data V1. So I have beginning inventory quantity. I'm going to go ahead and right click, rename the second one. Same thing. I'm going to get rid of the data file name. Same thing, I'm going to go in and rename it and name it inventory sales quantity. So now this is more descriptive of what my data actually has. Plus it's easy for me just to very quickly read the descriptions associated with the data file. You'll notice that for each and every single file we have 152 records. So one of the things that's nice as you pull and import into IDEA is that it gives you a record count, and you should always double check your record count to your original data source to make sure that they're in agreement. There could be some issues during the import process, and we just want to double check and confirm. So now let's go ahead and let's open up our beginning inventory quantity file. So keep in mind, and we're really going to somewhat ignore this column 3. Okay, so we have our product number and we also have our beginning inventory quantity. So now what we're going to do, and you'll see all the way over here to the right hand side of the IDEA screen, is that we have some properties related to this specific database. So now what you want to notice is there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 different options related to the database in terms of what we view. Now when we're looking at something, and it's the view we are currently looking at, it's going to be designated by the red check mark. So right now we are looking at the actual data that's in the database. So we can see the detail associated with the product number as well as the beginning inventory and quantity. We can also toggle through and go ahead and select these other options. So notice as I went from the data to the history that it went ahead and it showed and it changed, and the red check mark is now next to the history. So your history is sort of in essence your audit trail. It's showing the processes that you've done at what time by what individual user. So while this may not be super helpful for you and I as we're going ahead and working through our projects and learning how to use IDEA. It is very helpful when you're using this in a corporate setting where there could be multiple users that are going in and making changes to these files or within each project. So it's helpful to see the history associated with each of the things that happen. So, I mean, it went from, just going ahead from the initial import, and it actually gives you some scripting language associated with it. So you can see the IDEA script code that was used just for us to go ahead and to pull in the data. So it not only did that I went to import Excel file, it also shows the file path where the data was actually imported from, and also the various data files that were pulled in. And ultimately how it was able to import. It also too shows detail associated with us changing the name from one thing to another. So we went from inventory data underscore V1 dash beginning inventory quantity, and now it's beginning inventory quantity. So once again, it shows the complete history associated with any transactions that have been processed against this specific database. If we're moving on, we can go to our field statistics. When you press your field statistics for the first time, you will get this message which says statistics are not available for all fields. Do you wish to create statistics for all fields without them? And we're going to go ahead and click yes. So what that does is it's looking at the fields that are included in this particular database that we have open. And you can always go back here to read the database name, which is beginning inventory quantity. Now thinking back, we only have two different fields that actually contain data. We have product number, we also have beginning inventory. Our product number is purely numeric, so therefore IDEA is going to view it as a numerical value, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to perform analysis on it, such as things like net value, absolute value, minimum, max, any type of errors that you have associated with it, number of records, so on and so forth. Beginning inventory is, I think, where we will find more useful information because it's actually a quantity related to our inventory. So if you wanted to, say, for example, find out how many records actually contain positive values related to our inventory. You could go here. You could look to see if you wanted to see for our inventory, what was the minimum quantity of an inventory item that we would have versus maximum. So it looks like our quantities of inventory range from 0 to 71,000. You could also get, variances, population, things like that. Number of records that have a 0 value. Also, too, what's nice in IDEA, anytime you see the blue text, so as I'm hovering, you'll notice this is blacked out. So as I hover, it doesn't give me that little hand. If I hover over the 2, I can go ahead and I can click on it. And what it does is it actually gives detail associated with the 2 inventory items that have inventory equal to 0. So you'll notice that'll pop up, and it gives me an option to save it or to print it if I wanted to look into more detail related to that. So it gives me quite a bit of information, and you could see a lot of these things are clickable, if you will, and that's really anytime you get that blue text. Also too, and we can go back to our data by going ahead and hovering over our data. Notice when I was in field statistics, some of these other things were grayed out, and that's because we can't apply a control total to the statistics. They need to be applied back to the data. So if I click back to the data, you'll notice that now they're an option, control total as well as criteria. What that means, control total is just out of our numerical values. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick for this one, beginning inventory quantity. And what that does is it basically goes ahead and it adds together all of the quantities listed in the field that I select, and it has to be a numerical field. So beginning inventory quantity is numeric, and it goes ahead and it totals them 169,325. And that, once again, sometimes as we're going through is you want to tie out or agree to a number given, and that would be a very quick way to do it. Also, too, criteria is just a way for me to go ahead and to put some type of filter on my data. So let's say I wanted to look for all inventory that was equal to or had a quantity greater than 5. I could very easily go ahead and do beginning inventory quantity. I could use my greater than sign and use 5 and go ahead and click OK. And now what you'll notice is that my inventory is going to be limited to those that have a quantity greater than 5. So some of the records are now hidden. I can go back to my original data set by just clicking on that, and then I want to remove my criteria. So all I want to do is over here, I just want to go ahead and I want to clear it. You'll notice it now goes away and I go back to my original data set.